listening to the Punisher Waterfowls, the Union 0430 podcast, brought to you by Real Geese Decoys, the most technological advanced silhouette decoys on the market, and Vortex Canada, the force of optics.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 104 of the Union 0430 podcast. We're joined today by Logan Williamson. You guys remember him from the last First Lite podcast that we did. And we've got Sean Weaver from Duck Lore. Today, it's Mark and I. I got to start off by saying you're probably expecting Damien, but unfortunately, his father passed away suddenly. So our thoughts and prayers are going out to him and the family. Yeah, anyhow. So today we've got Sean Weaver. You might recognize him from Duck Lore. It's probably my favorite YouTube other than the Punisher podcast, I got to say. And that it stems from just the fact that it's honest representation of hunting. Like you're not seeing Sean every single episode shooting limits, and you're not seeing them doing any of this crazy stuff. So I really enjoy the show. Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
First off, thanks for the compliment. It's hard to show killing limits every hunt if you don't kill limits every hunt. So just being honest about my abilities, right?
But that's fine. That's fine though. Like some guys, they would still they just wouldn't show an episode, right? Like you guys have probably had that in production for so long, but I'm sure that you could have made it look like you had a limit, So props to you guys for doing that and showing the actual true sides of hunting there, So.
Well, not to get too far, we can talk about that more later, but I think that's something that was missing from waterfowl content for a long time is just what everyday Joes go through, right? So that was my goal with the show. But as far as where I'm from, grew up in Iowa, which is like the worst place in the world to be a duck hunter. Maybe not quite as bad as like Rhode Island or Hawaii, but pretty rough, And anyway, grew up there, had to work real hard to kill birds, and then got wise when I turned 18 and moved to South Dakota.
Sean, how old were you when you started waterfowling? I don't know if I've ever asked you this question.
First time I ever tried to go waterfowling, I was 9 years old. And my dad had my dad and grandpa and uncle were out in a slough duck hunting, and they had left me in the car. I was sleeping in the car, to be fair. And I decided to try to walk out to them. Well, they're like 300 yards out into this slough and mud flats, 100 yards of mud flats. I get out into the mud wearing little kid rubber boots, and instantly over the boots, stuck, start having to holler for my dad to come get me out. They got to come pull me out of the mud. So that was my first attempt at waterfowl hunting, but killed my first duck actually when I was 12.
Now that would have made a good show. That would have gotten great reviews on YouTube.
It's really too bad that iPhones weren't a thing then, because that would be some real gold to have nowadays. Like throw in a Duck Lore episode of Sean buried up to his knees in mud, hollering for his daddy.
And that's why the old guys were so good at telling stories, because they had to be descriptive and they had to exaggerate, right? So I'm sure your dad and them had some pretty colorful stories for that day.
Oh, they still tell stories about that. Oh, he's a big duck hunter now, but you should have seen the one time.
and that's just it. Like when you talk about it would be great to have iPhones back then. Man, I don't want half the shit I was doing on an iPhone, videos. You see some of the stuff coming out now, whoa, right?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Yeah. But
yeah, I just think I would be scared of more than anything how I hunted back then. This is a whole nother story, but freshman year of college, or sophomore year of college, we got a Pontiac Grand Prix stuck 2 miles down a mud road. And didn't we, we were poor, like poor, had $37 between the 5 of us in that car collectively. And we didn't want to ruin our hunting clothes. And we had shot 5 limits of ducks. So stuffed all in the windows of this Grand Prix is ducks, like limits of ducks. And then we took all of our clothes off to push this car in the mud because we didn't want to ruin the only hunting clothes we had. So we're all stripped down to our boxers. It's 45 degrees outside. Camo waders and ducks shoved all in this Pontiac Grand Prix. And we pushed that car for almost 2 miles. Couldn't get it up the last hill and ended up having to call a farmer to tow us out anyway.
I thought you were going to say that the cops showed up and just saw 5 college age guys in their boxers pushing a car full of ducks.
I gave the very, very, very PG short version of that, but there were some expletives thrown around about first responders, from sheriff department, and from the farmer. And let me tell you, that farmer, my buddy Brady, was wearing pink American Eagle boxers, and he was sure there was some funny business going on that wasn't duck hunting. He did not want to give us a tow. He was adamant that he was not going to, and the sheriff department finally convinced him to. Bless his heart.
These damn kids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, we did some stupid stuff.
So how did it?
Though.
Oh yeah, fun back in the day, and now you can't do anything without being caught on the cell phone, right? So yeah, there you go. So
There's
how did
probably a video floating around from that hunt somewhere, because there was cell phones.
Oh. So how did it evolve from you being a boy with your boots stuck in the mud to you getting on and doing this duck lore?
Man, so when I was like 13 or so, went on just an unbelievable migration day mallard hunt with my buddy Jace. It was a family friend of his took us. And, we're 2 kids, 13 and 14 years old, and hunting with a guy that actually knows what he's doing, and killed 3 limits of greenheads. Thinking back on it, he probably did most of the shooting there. And I just got absolutely ate up with it. I mean, all through high school after that, every waking moment was how we were going to go duck hunting. In the summertime, we were building boat blinds on boats and stuff. I mean, everything was duck hunting. And when I went to college at South Dakota State in Brookings, it's because it's a duck town. Like, that was one of the huge reasons I wanted to go there. And just got kind of, almost fell into it, but also wasn't afraid to talk to people I didn't know and make friends. There's a guy who kind of depends on who, like, people in the waterfowl space tend to really know who he is. People that aren't like in the industry, I guess, if you wanted to call it, don't really know him, but his name is Ben Fuyon, and he's a hunting guide. Worked at Habitat Flats for a long time. He's one of the most duck killing SOBs I know. Great dude. And I straight up, introduced myself to him, asked him if he knew anyone looking for a hunting guide, just a decoy setter, scout, whoever. I just wanted to get my feet wet in guiding, and he got me a job guiding. And from there, the rest is history. Everything after that, with the exception of maybe 2 bad decisions that weren't based on ducks, every other decision has been based on ducks. So yeah, I got into production in college while I was guiding, and started making videos, and was really doing it as a way to book hunting clients. It was just a means to an end, but I liked doing it a lot, and kind of eventually realized that there was probably more money to be made hiring myself out as a videographer than than as a hunting guide.
And then that's
Yeah.
kind of evolved into Meat Eater taking you on, and season 1 of Duck Lure's done now. Season 2, when are we going to see that?
Season 2 comes out on July 19th.
Ooh.
So
that's quite the day for First Lite and Meat Eater, isn't it?
It sure is. It's a big day.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So
yeah.
Any guests that you can tell us about for season 2?
Oh yeah, we can talk about it. Hope people watch them because I talk about them. So well, the first episode is on the Great Salt Lake, which is just one of the gnarliest, craziest environments to hunt ducks, man. It's so cool, but it's so wild. And we get walloped by quite the cold front during that. I mean, it takes a lot for that lake to freeze as hard as it did on us. But it froze pretty good, and we still made it work. But golly,
yeah, you're not dealing with brackish water there. That's not brackish ice. That is salty ice. Like, it's got to be cold.
Yeah, it's like super salty.
Not to like spoiler alert, but we had the one morning show up to where we wanted to hunt, and there's thousands of dead shovelers and teal, like frozen the ice.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which I'd never seen that. And now, not to get real far into the weeds, but now I can't help but wonder if it wasn't like a mix of the cold and the avian influenza outbreaks starting.
I was just about to ask, like, were they kind of weak from the avian influenza? That's crazy.
But the thing is like Glade, Glade is the guy I was hunting with on that episode, friend of mine from Salt Lake, Glade Harris. He was there 2 days before and had not seen a single dead bird anywhere, like no sign of sick birds or anything like that. So I still kind of think it was the cold, but man, to see, and the eagles were having a heyday. Golly, dude, they were just everywhere. That's like Christmas morning, for a bald eagle. Yeah. All of a sudden you wake up the next morning and there's like 2,000 shovelers just frozen place, can't go anywhere.
Have you ever had a bald eagle attack your decoys?
I have one time. Yeah, I've also had a osprey try.
We had a bald eagle do it one day. He hit the decoys first, and then he came back later and tried for a cormorant. We were hoping he would, but he missed. The cormorant seen him in the last second, drop in the water.
Yes, should have saved some perch lives. Too bad that eagle didn't get him.
What do those birds react like? Those birds of prey react when they hit a decoy? Is it like when a buck in rut hits a decoy, he goes to charge him and realizes that it's a lawn ornament and freaks out? Or are they a little bit like, are they super confused, or do they just try to carry it off?
Depends if they like get it gripped good. If they get it gripped good, they try to carry it off. But if they can't grip it, they wonder what the heck's wrong with it. Jeez. At least that's my experience with the 2 encounters I've had.
No, just all you could hear was the claws hitting plastic, and then that was it. He left it and went on.
See, we had it once where there was a big open, like the lake was frozen pretty much solid, and there's like one big patch that was empty, and you just basically sat on the ice shelf, and the birds would come in and you shoot them. Well, if the bird landed in the water and you didn't get the dog or kayak out to it quick enough, the eagles would be taking it from you. And it's like, shit, does that count as my limit? Like, is that the bird's limit? How does this work? Right? Like,
ooh, yeah,
right. Touchy. So I never shoot limits, so it doesn't matter. But yeah. So that's good.
That makes 2 of us.
That is an interesting point, though. It's a lot like fishing saltwater with sharks around, right? Like, you've got one on the line, it's almost to the boat, and then right before it gets in the boat, you just get taxed. It's interesting to think about. But I mean, I also think that, while it's a gray area legally, we all got to make our own choice of, how we feel in that moment, because I mean, it's the same with, a winged bird that you don't recover, right? Like you got to make that call on your own. What are the bird populations around? Like, how do you feel about it? What kind of a bird was it? There's a bunch of things that come into play there. And, but interesting to think of, because I mean, that's nature. That's a little different than, you not being able to recover a bird that you shot. That is straight up nature, Mother Nature coming in and being like, nope, thank you, I'll take that.
Yeah. Well, I look at it that I took the shot. I took that bird. I harvested it, whether I got it or the bird got it. That's one of my limit, right? It's the same with, like, we were hunting once and someone shot one and it crippled it and it was back in the cornfield. And then when they went and looked, we couldn't find it, but we found like tracks of some animal. Well, was it a coyote? Did a coyote get it? Well, it's still part of our limit, so let's pack up early, right? Like that's how we see it.
Well,
yeah,
listen,
I mean,
there's a lot of ethical guys on this podcast right now. Okay. Like I'm being serious when I say that. Me personally, if I watch a bird of prey come and snatch up a bird that I just got before I can run my waiter ass out to him, I feel pretty good that that's not my bird. Someone else has taken possession of that one. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. But
I'd like to think that eagle wouldn't have got that duck without my help.
Fair point. I'll also say this. I look at the four of us here and it doesn't appear to me any of us are starving to death. So I probably don't need to shoot one more, but
yeah. Touche.
Yeah. I've had hawks assist me twice on hunts and actually get me 2 birds. So
wow.
One
Really?
time we were goose hunting, and the first flock of the morning, we could see like a dozen geese come over our back right shoulder, and they were flying really weird. And in amongst the geese, I was like, is that a duck flying with the geese? And as we're watching, it's like it's zipping and going like this through the geese. And we're like, hold on a minute, that's a hawk. And so the geese were flying the most erratic path for a flock of geese I ever seen. They flew past us and then into the next field. And then up came a goose and came flying back towards us. And as it flew towards us, the hawk was diving at it, and it landed 15 feet to my right. And he's like in the middle of the decoys. He's like, oh, hey guys, that was pretty cool, hey? He was 15 feet away from me.
Yeah.
Ryan was there for that one.
See, there's all kinds of stories like this that people who don't hunt and don't do the outdoors just don't understand that shit, right? Like, and it's Mother Nature, and it's a beast at times, but at other times it's like it's pretty amazing to watch some of this stuff, right? So
yeah.
But I don't know. I personally, if I was hunting on season 2, I'd probably think Logan would be, or watching season 2, I'd probably think that Logan would be a great guest. That ever happen? Huh? No.
Yeah, it did. Yep, Logan's in there. So Kevin Harlander from First Lite is in season 2. Logan's in season 2. Kimmy Werner, which maybe some people would know by Kimmy Swimmy on Instagram. She's a spearfisher woman. Clay Newcomb from Meat Eater, Anne Marie Doremus from Arkansas Game and Fish, Kevin Gillespie from Meat Eater, and Mikhail Goins, a great hunting buddy of mine, and Josh Wright from Wyoming. That's season 2's lineup of people. But yeah, Logan's in there, and we went to Missouri.
Nice. And what about?
That was an awesome experience. I never hunted Missouri before. And honestly, I mean, Sean taught me so much about Missouri, including what kind of awesome public land opportunities they have down there and what programs they have to really bolster that habitat and keep it really good for, not just ducks, but deer or whatever else. I think it's kind of a sleeper state for all sorts of hunting, and not just hunting. I mean, you should have seen some of the crappie boats we saw at the boat launches. I mean, these were like $60,000 crappie boat rigs, like all set up. And so, I mean, honestly, it was very, very cool. In my head, Missouri has been a land of big bucks. And then, without having been there and experienced it myself, I really didn't have much of a concept of what it was like down there, but it's kind of a sportsman's paradise down there. no matter whether you want, there's plenty of opportunity to get on the water, and then whether you like to chase game in the air or on the ground, there's obviously a ton of opportunity for that as well.
Here's a gauge of how good Missouri is you don't see their license plate in every other state hunting, right? They stick around home and they hunt hard, man. The hardest hunting fools I know, a lot of them are from Missouri. And I don't know where it sits nowadays, but a few years back anyway, Missouri was the number 2 state for mallard harvest. It slides pretty far for total duck harvest. I think it's still top 10, but you got California and Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. You have so many ducks and so many duck hunters. But as far as pure great mallard hunting, like Missouri is a force to be reckoned with. And part of that is that they have a dedicated percentage of their sales tax that goes to the Missouri Department of Conservation. And so they have what a lot of people call duck parks, where they have I think it's 43 of them. There's 40 something state owned and managed wildlife areas that are managed solely for duck hunting. So they've got flooded corn, moist soil units, millet, all this prime habitat. And some of those places average over 4 ducks per hunter per day, which is, that's incredible hunting for public land.
Wow. So if you want to go to hunt something like that, is that kind of like a draw? Like if you go somewhere to hunt there's blinds, I bet, built already, right? So you kind of got to get there early, or
those places are kind of a mix. Most of them are not even a blind you actually sit in, but a blind area, like a stake out in the water, and you have to hunt within X distance of this spot. And you draw every morning. I think it's a digital drawing system now. And it's a little harder for non-residents to do. You're not going to get drawn to go out there every day. Some of those are a little more walk-in, like first come, first serve, I think. But we weren't on any of that ground. But it just showed it does produce holding power for the state of Missouri, right? The state of Missouri draws and holds more birds because of those. Yeah. And just there's a culture of duck hunting there that kind of slides under the radar a little bit.
Or is overshadowed by whitetail, which is completely fine if you're a duck hunter. Yeah. Let the whitetail hunters come and do their thing, and leave the ducks for everyone else.
Yeah. It's not like Arkansas in the way that it has the same crowds and consistency, right? We put in a lot of work for those birds, and there was a lot of people hunting those birds.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of scouting. That was something else hunting with Sean. The amount of scouting we did. Western big game scouting, both of us on Onyx the entire time, dropping pins, figuring out where property boundaries are. And for me, growing up and hunting in Michigan, we had 1 or 2 holes that we would hunt. Going to Maryland, it was which pit are we hunting in for geese today? And there's only a couple options, and it's largely all private land anyways. And so to go there and have those different opportunities was really cool. But also, I don't think that I had ever at this point not that I haven't hunted with plenty of hardcore guys, but one of the reasons that Sean is very good at his job, don't get a big head, Sean, but is that he's willing to go the extra.
It's pretty big.
I know. Trust me, I know what hat size you wear, but just to see, how far it can go, and then to see the actual results. It was honestly, I can equate it to, very closely to how you'd prepare to go on a big game hunt. And, applying some of those strategies and scouting techniques into waterfowl, it was very cool to see, how effective they could be for us, because, as Sean said, we we shot a couple limits, but it was, I mean, they definitely weren't given to us, and we had to deal with all sorts of crazy stuff, to make it happen. But it was because we had all of that information in our head of, okay, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C. And if they're not flying here or they're not there, like, this is where we're going to go. And that's the same way that you Western big game hunt. To be completely honest, even in my years of waterfowling, that is not, approach I had taken. So it was really, really cool just to see how that worked and learn from Sean in that regard.
Yeah. And hopefully that's something that people can take when they actually watch these shows that Sean's putting on, like, that there's something to learn every time when you see someone that's passionate and experienced, right? So it's good to hear that. And that is the secret to a good waterfowl hunt, is lots of scouting, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just tried to be a sponge with Sean, and it's really funny too, because the way that first time hunters in Missouri get their license, you actually have to go to a physical store and present your hunter's your hunter education certification, so that you can they can give you can't do it online. Well, Sean had hunted Missouri before, already had was in their system, and so we're trying to buy my license the night before at the Airbnb. We got in super late, and I actually had to what do they call it? I had to be like his apprentice hunter basically for the week. And that joke did not get old for Sean or our camera guys, just that I was his apprentice all week. But in a much bigger sense, after, saying what I just did, it wasn't too far from the truth, which was pretty cool. Came out of that one, out of that trip with a whole wealth of knowledge. And I think getting to hunt a new place too, that, we go back to talking about all the different opportunities Missouri has, especially in public land. Again, I never waterfowled in a place like that, so it was a perfect example of putting the techniques that Sean showed us to use. You're not going to be able to put them to use like that everywhere, and Missouri just happened to be a perfect storm of both habitat, and everything was very well managed, and we caught some good days of weather, some good bad days of weather.
We did hit the migration and the weather right. I mean, if we'd been there a week earlier, it would have been pretty bad hunting, honestly. We did time it right.
What was it like having Logan as an apprentice though? Were you ever like in a field and you turned around to see Logan yelling like, Sean, and he's like boots deep in the mud?
I pulled him out of the mud like he was a 9-year-old from Iowa. I showed him how to load his shotgun.
Yeah.
I mean,
I could tell.
Padawan or grasshopper.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I had Sean Weaver with me. Wouldn't have shot a duck.
That's good. So I really want to transition, because we talked about July 19th, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's kind of interesting that First Lite's putting out all this gear, and you can buy it starting July 19th, right? But did the shows happen simply because of the gear, or how did that all kind of evolve? Because it's been the greatest advertisement. People if you go on the online forums, you go to like the First Lite pages on Facebook, and it's like, oh, the new episode of Duck Lure's out, and look, I see the backpack, and I see this, and I see that, and people are picking out frame by frame. Like, yeah, I think there's an episode where someone's like walking through a foot of mud or a foot of water, and I'm pretty sure it was just a set of Seek pants, but they were like, I'm pretty sure that's the new this or the, so it's been the best advertisement for gear. Is that kind of the purpose of it, or?
So, I didn't completely finish my story, really, how I ended up getting into Meat Eater, right? Yeah. Earlier. Like, I didn't explain it all the way. And that kind of brings some context to this. So I met Steve on a wild game food event in Oregon in like 2018. And I was the photographer for it. And afterwards, put the camera down, and him and I started just BSing. I was having some beers. We started talking duck hunting, and we clicked. We enjoyed talking duck hunting, and I invited him to come hunt in South Dakota. And the next year he came and hunted in South Dakota with me. We filmed an episode of Meat Eater's Netflix show, duck hunting there. And after that, Steve said, we've kind of ignored doing waterfowl content for a long time, but we want to do it. You know, would you want to do something for us? Put together some ideas for us, and tell us what you want to do. And honestly, all the way till, you know, last spring when we started planning duck lore, up till that point, we didn't really know what the waterfowl content was going to look like, who was going to, like, I knew I was going to produce it, but what the show would actually take form as was kind of still left up in the air. But this is the one show I was really passionate about wanting to do, was do a DIY duck hunting show that dives more into the history, dives more into understanding the birds, dives more into understanding the locations, and really show what every duck hunter goes through that most duck hunting shows have ignored for too long. And that's coming from someone that produced duck hunting TV for 5 years and was maybe not producing a duck lore type show, right? And so, yeah, but then, you know, honestly, going into season, then it was like, well, by the way, like, we really want you to, you know, test this First Lite waterfowl gear hard, like put it through the ringer. And it kind of just panned out that duck lore ended up perfectly coinciding with First Lite waterfowl. Really, I mean, it was a natural evolution for 4 years for me to end up at Meat Eater. But
And I'm sure it was a little bit more strategic than Sean and I will ever know. Do I think it's a coincidence that Sean and I started within mere months of each other? No, I don't. I think that there was probably some wheels in motion beforehand. But, you know, Dave, as you kind of touched on earlier, not a bad business model, eh? You know, when you can get someone like Sean talking about the gear, in the field with the gear, putting it through the paces, but then also to have an audience see that, you know, from a product development standpoint, it's very important that we tell that wear test story and we get the validation from the people who are using it the hardest. And, you know, Sean is definitely someone who is not only in the field every opportunity that he can be, but he just beats the hell out of his shit. So I know that if it's going to work for Sean, if it's going to last Sean a season, you know, I honestly go into expectations with some of our most hardcore wear testers, like, God bless, let it get it through this season with this gear. And Sean's still wearing stuff, you know, from 2 years ago. So, you know, some of the first stuff we wore. So that's very good validation for us. But I also know that, you know, if Sean breaks something, that we're going to have to fix it. And also Sean's a good sounding board too. God, Sean, your head's going to be so big after this podcast. Well, I didn't know I was going to be hyping you up this much.
I was going to say that I'm ruthless on your shit. Like, I tell you what I like and don't like. I don't hold back on that. I do tell you when I think something's wrong.
Oh, sure. And I think that it also makes Sean and I a really good team too, because I don't know, you think we are the furthest thing from your standard corporate structure and lifestyle, you know, at Meat Eater. But at the same time, I mean, this is a business, and, you know, moving forward, we need validation, we need support for ideas. And so, you know, Sean and I, it's really important for us to be collaborative on, you know, especially on the product side, you know, for me, just because I know that if something's working for Sean and Sean really likes it, that even if that isn't the opinion of the masses at the time, like, I feel comfortable that we can educate that customer, and this is the better way to do it. And that kind of keeps us thinking forward too, of better ways to do things all the time. And some of the best ideas, I mean, that Sean and I have had for product, or the evolution of product, has just been sitting in that blind in Missouri, or, you know, multiple blinds, or driving around in the truck. I mean, that's where you're going to identify problems, but more importantly, identify, you know, ways to do things better. You know, Dave, same thing when we were up snow goose hunting with you this spring. It was really good to get the stuff in the field. And as we look towards the next evolution of that product, and, you know, the stuff that we talked about in that blind that I can't necessarily talk about on the podcast now, it's influencing it in such a positive direction. And that's the one thing that, we definitely don't take for granted in our jobs and in this industry, is being able to get in the field with people. But that's why it is so important. Some people think like, oh, you guys are just hunting. It's like, yeah, but it's like really, really important that we do this stuff. And it's really important that, we're able to spend the time together, and, not just an afternoon hunt, not just one morning hunt, one time a year. It's like, let's go to Missouri for 5 days and just pound this stuff and see what we can come up with. And so not only did it create great content for Sean's duck lore season, it also helped, influence and keep the ball rolling for the next seasons for us in First Lite waterfowl, and how we can evolve and keep making those products better.
And it's very evident. Like, I don't know how much Sean actually put into some of the stuff I'm about to say, but like, it's very evident that you had duck hunters reviewing the gear. Like when you sent all the stuff up for us to hunt and test, Damien, it all went to Damien's house, and I'm 6 hours away from him. So I'm like, we did a conference call, and he's just like, look at this and look at this. And I'm like, well, did they think of this? Did they think of a little clip for your mud motor for the emergency switch, right? Did they think of this? Did they think of that? And we're going through everything. It's like, holy shit. Like they must have, this isn't like a matter of a deer hunter, like, oh, well, this would make a good duck jacket. This is actually like, you had input from duck hunters and various disciplines. Like I kayak duck hunt, and a lot of the stuff will fit for what I'm doing. Damien has a mud motor on a boat. It'll fit for him. Phil does a lot of panel blinds and layout blinds, and the stuff worked for him. So we all had differing opinions, but it fit all of us.
Philly. What a guy. He certainly has a lot of opinions. I miss him. God bless him. He's another one that's not afraid to hit me up on a random Wednesday night with a bunch of product ideas, which is honestly so awesome. And you're going to hear me in some of the promo videos say over and over again, one of the crucial parts of wear testing and product development is just making sure that Sean and I just didn't test that gear in Missouri. It got tested in the Chesapeake. It got tested in the Pacific Northwest. It got tested in New Mexico. Like it's made its way around. And that's
Ontario,
so
Canada.
Ontario, Canada. There you go. I tell you what, all those snow geese we shot.
It was a great
real testament to the gear.
It would have fit in on duck lore season 1, that's for sure.
I'll tell you what, it's not.
That's funny. That is funny. Duck lore season 2 is a little different than duck lore season 1. Duck lore season 1, you got to be a masochist to enjoy that type of hunting.
But just to bring it back, like there's all feedback is good feedback, right? And everyone, you brought it up, Dave. You just said it, everyone chases ducks in their own waters a little bit differently. Some are in kayaks, some are in boats, some are, boats to dry land, panel blinds, pit blinds. You go into the Carolinas and some of those, I'm sure there's a different word for it, but it's like a sink blind, right, Sean? And that's super old school. But again, everyone's waters are a little bit different in how they get after. I mean, we look at some of the local water here in Idaho, and it is just skinny little backwaters that you got to paddle into. But even still, Dave, like I'm doing the same thing you are, but it's a little bit different. The gear's a little bit different. The needs are a little bit different. And that's why it's so important that we get the gear in your hands. And it's even more important that we get around and get to travel with you guys and hunt with you guys, because it's one thing to talk about it over text, it's another to come to some of these realizations together when we're sitting in the blind.
And go ahead.
Well, and I don't even remember what I was gonna say. I got distracted. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like,
1,000,000 miles a minute.
I bug Logan all the time. Sometimes it takes him 2 or 3 days to get back to me. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 minutes.
He's just going to put that out on the internet.
No, because you're busy, right? But the one thing that I've noticed is if I see something that's being like criticism, I'll be like, hey, Logie, like, man, people are saying this or this shit's going on. Or there was a guy doing like memes, right? And I was like, hey, Logan, just so you know, and I try to keep him up to date on some of the stuff that we're seeing. And it's never amount of like, it's not like criticism doesn't get taken harshly. They kind of look at it like, oh, we've got that and we're thinking of that already or whatever. So that's one thing that I enjoy about sending you messages there, Logan, is that you kind of take that criticism as feedback just to put into what you were saying. Like it helps you with development. And I know Sean's wanting to
Yeah.
say, I could see it in his face. He wants to say something right now about him.
Oh man, well, I was just thinking about how, I mean, I don't know how many hours I've spent like texting, slacking, calling Logan, being, especially on all my drives last year. It's like, hey, what do you think about, this product to fit in this, in this
Well,
gap?
truck
in the
truck
lineup?
drives are where the best ideas come from.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anytime I know you're driving, I'm like, oh, he's got something good.
Well, yeah, because it's when I all of a sudden hit up everybody I haven't talked to in 5 days, right? Like I go radio silent for 5 days while we're filming, except in Missouri when it seemed like everyone from work thought that was the time to call me. But
we had also
outside of that-
just launched, we were on that shoot and we launched, we basically did the soft launch of the line, the big
we
reveal
announced
too.
the
So
line while we were sitting out there.
yeah, while we were sitting on the blind, 9 a.m. prime time, and Sean and I's phones are blowing up.
What was I gonna say? One thing I'm real super pumped about for waterfowlers is now there's a direct line for them to be exposed to First Lite base layers. Like waterfowl, I mean, that was really for me the kind of awakening of coming, like when I came to First Lite, wearing First Lite, was like, man, I've been missing out for a long time on things like the furnace. Like, oh dude, the First Lite base layers are they're just kick ass. And a lot of waterfowlers, frankly, have never had exposure to First Lite. They haven't had exposure to those base layer systems. Now all of a sudden there's a reason to get them interested in them. And I think a lot of waterfowlers are going to be like, okay, I've been really missing out for a long time here.
Well, Sean, you just nailed it right on the head. I mean, that from what I know, pre-hire, is that foundation, they're like, listen, we've got half of it. Like we've got a really good foundation for waterfowlers. The waterfowlers are already using our merino wool. They're already using our soft shell, so we've got half of the equation already put together. Now let's give them a camo pattern and, the rest of the dedicated outerwear that they need to get the job done. But merino wool is really our first handshake with waterfowlers,
Right. And it was just that it was Western waterfowlers that were aware of it, right? Like
Sure.
if we're calling a spade, guys in South Dakota and Missouri and Arkansas just, weren't aware.
Totally.
Like, now they will be.
Totally. And not just there too. I mean, we think of First Lite distribution. We started as a Western hunting mountain brand, and we're moving our way east. And now that we have, as you move your way east, you move into whitetail, quite immediately. And obviously our whitetail business is a really booming right now and continuing to grow. And that's an awesome handshake with those regions. But then as you get even further east, from north all the way up into BFE Ontario and the land of butter tarts down to, southern Louisiana, waterfowl is kind of the name of the game as you start to hit the East Coast. And so, Sean kind of alluded to, we're working that way. And, especially with the help of, a platform like Duck Lore, to show the product from coast to coast. Like it's such an awesome exposure for us. And Dave, just kind of bring this full circle to what you said, it's a great business model. So, Sean and I work together on product ideation and evolving that product and what new products do we need to bring to market, where do we need to test them, and the guys in those regions that we want to get sign off. Like it's the buck doesn't just stop with Sean and I, or the guys in our office too. I mean, the network of people that we know and that especially that Sean is in with and has met through his entire career in waterfowl. Those are our biggest names. You guys, for example, in Punisher Waterfowl, like just great assets for us. And that's why it's so important, like I said, and I'm going to continue to say it, just to get it in the field and in the different flyways and chase ducks and geese, any way, that they're doing it locally, so we can make sure that our gear is up to the test.
Yeah. And going back to what you're saying about merino is one of those things that I do a lot of kayak duck hunting. And whenever new guys reach out to me and they're like, hey, what do I need? And I'm like, man, get yourself some merino. Like, you tip that kayak, you're going to be soaking wet. You get back in that kayak with anything else, like synthetics and stuff, you're going to get cold real quick. You're still going to get cold, but it's going to retain a lot of that heat, because I forget the number on it, but like 80% or something.
Yeah.
Like,
80%. And obviously there's some other factors like wind, for example, that's going to play a role in that. But, synthetics and merino are, when you think about the waterfowl use case, it's just a little bit different. Like the advantage that synthetics have, over merino wool is quick drying. But like, how quick is quick? If your hunt is 4 hours long, you're still going to be kind of soggy even in your synthetic base layer, right? But you're not going to be as warm as you are in your merino, right? So if your name of the game, you went in, you got dunked, and the name of the game now is, all right, well, I'm here for the hunt, I'm here for the next 4 hours. Am I going to be warm, or am I going to be like kind of dry? And the entire time the synthetic is taking to dry, it's actually going to actively cool you down as well. So give and take. But again, it just to hammer on what you said, Dave, merino wool was a perfect fit for waterfowl, gave us a great platform to launch off of. And honestly was something that the guys that were in the know of First Lite and First Lite merino were already wearing. So it gave us kind of a good springboard into the waterfowl space for sure.
Yeah.
I never thought I would own a wool t-shirt. But this
Dude, no kidding. No kidding.
Is my favorite shirt ever. I gotta
merino
say,
tech tees are very,
black,
very good.
So yeah, if it's getting pretty hot here, I might not wear it outside, but it's actually it's gonna make me order these in different colors so that I can wear them when it's like 30 degrees out, because I love this shirt.
Yeah, and it's the best base. The super lightweight wool. A lot of guys in our office, Sean included, like if you can start with that t-shirt, the super lightweight, and then layer a furnace on top of it, that's the way to go, because that super thin layer next to your skin is going to control your body's microclimate in both cooling and heating. And then you put something like that's very thermal on top of it, like a heavyweight furnace, and it's going to keep you warm. But like, as you in those active moments, that super thin layer of wool is actually going to, react to your body's activity level to keep you not cool or warm, but to manage you right at that perfect level, and work in conjunction with your other base layers. So that was actually a very good segue into talking more about merino.
Well,
I just quickly, don't forget that they actually have that same black one with different like patterns on the front. You can get the topography one and all that stuff, because I grabbed all the same ones so that people wouldn't look at me like, you're wearing the same shirt every single day of the week. What the hell's wrong with you? Right. So yeah.
Hey, and we can say it now, but
we're dirty duck hunters. We're allowed to do that.
Next week that's the best part. I would say arguably the best part about merino wool. And man, I thought you'd really only appreciate it in the backcountry, but being in a duck camp for 5 days, you can get ripe. And the merino doesn't stink. It just doesn't.
You know what, man? Getting a motorcycle accident where it's hard to get shirts on and off, and a merino shirt like what he's wearing is golden. Like, you put that on, wife doesn't complain so much.
You're good for days.
You're good for days.
I've had this on for 3 days.
Yeah. Sorry, Sean, you were going to say something.
It doesn't stink.
I was just going to say, I had actually got a message from a guy today asking, what, like, he's like, I'm really on a budget, but I want some of the new First Lite stuff. Like, what are the absolute core pieces you got to have? And I was like, man, you got to start off like getting yourself into some of the First Lite wool. And I was like, a wick hoodie, a furnace QZ, Origin hoodie, Brookstown vest, and an LZ jacket. That setup right there can cover you through so much of the season, just because the variability of it all and the ability to control that like Nexus skin. I was, he was from Minnesota, hunts a lot early season. I was like, man, you'll be able to wear that wick hoodie when you're swatting mosquitoes and loving it. and you'll still be wearing that wick hoodie at the end of the season as your next skin.
Totally.
And that furnace you can wear as your top layer. Like I found myself all through October pretty much wearing the furnace as my top layer, right? So yeah.
And that's something that it's important to remember as we launch this new category and these new systems of dress. Like our base layer is our base layer. It's our foundation. It has been First Lite's foundation, and base layer, like the nomenclature, it's literally the base of everyone's hunting kit. Like that's very familiar to customers. And then the next level comes what we're calling transitional outerwear. And that's something I'm going to say a gazillion times and we're going to beat customers over the head with. And transitional outerwear are items that are early and mid-season outerwear that as the season gets cold and the weather gets super nasty become great mid layers. And so you look at our catalyst pieces, our catalyst system that has, top performers, fan favorites of First Lite, great for underweighters and under, your rain jackets and your waterproof outerwear, because it controls that microclimate so well. It's a breathable soft shell. So, you look at some of our foundational hunt pieces, you look at our foundation in base layer, and honestly, we had 80%, we had, 60%, we had everything that waterfowlers needed except a camo pattern and like 4 or 5 really key pieces. And now we've got them. And so it's important to tell that full system story because it all works together. It's all fit together. There's features that line up with each other, like kit link on the outside. So it goes to show you, for guys that have been wearing First Lite for a while, now the pieces that, 80% of our customers already have in their closet, we fit it underneath, and this is how it works, with the waterfowl outerwear. And for the brand new guys, it's just a little bit of an education process going forward of like, hey, start with base layer, and then you start with the things that you're going to wear in the truck in the morning, and then now we have the highly technical waterproof outerwear that you're going to wear in the blind when you're actively hunting.
Now talk more about that Typha, because to me, like, I always hunted with the Cypher, right? That was kind of like, it fit more the region that I was hunting. Cypher was just the brown and the beige, and to me, like, a company could have just thrown that Cypher on the new LZ jacket and said, this is our Waterfowl line, and that would have been, I think people would have accepted it. But you guys put in a ton of time and effort and a lot of testing, because like if you watch that Typha video and you see Kevin Harlander and the drone zooms out from him, and then he's talking about like, yeah, we just need to darken up the base color, and like, talk more about Typha. Either one of you.
How much time we got? I talk about Typha until the cows come home. But
I can talk to you guys for hours. Let's go.
It was really good. You're absolutely right, though. It took arguably even more time. We actually looked the other day. Just we were curious to try and figure out exactly how long we've been working on the waterfowl product leading up to the launch. And it was February of 2020 that I handed over the brief to our designer for the camo pattern. And it was 7 rounds of design and 12 different color variations, after which that we had to really hone in on and to get the thing right. And it's with birds, specifically ducks, like color is so important. If you want to learn more about duck vision, please head over to themeateater.com and read Sean's article on the truth about duck vision. Great article. It was an awesome article. Actually, I used basically the cliff notes of his entire article for another podcast I did recently, but tons of good information. If you didn't know already, Sean knows a little bit about ducks. You learn a lot about duck vision through there, but you'll learn that, they see how they see. You learn a little bit more about how they see and why it was so important for us to focus on color so much on color. And, color actually plays a direct role in the depth perception and why that was so important in the development of this camo pattern. But yeah, we took, and God bless him, luckily I tell you, Sean's one of my biggest validators of our product. And, I think the first time that Sean and I met each other and we were talking, he he said to me, and this is honestly what was in my head when going into it. He just said, the problem with waterfowl patterns is that they're all too dark these days.
Yep.
So I was so happy to hear that, because honestly, that was my whole soapbox going into development of this, is that when you look at Cypher, and it is dark, it has what we call a dark ground, where you're seeing more of the darkest color in the pattern than you are in the lightest color of the pattern. And what we did is what that does is it creates a lot of contrast, which is very good for macro breakup of your silhouette. But when viewed at from a super long distance, which ungulates, deer and elk, like how they see, they're not going to see you from that far away. Like your breakup doesn't really matter at that. But what you look like in a darker camo from a long ways away is a dark blob. You turn into a dark blob. And so it was constantly trying to solve for the dark blob problem. And so again, developing this camo pattern, you're not just, these guys have their eyes on you from a long ways away. And the way that their eyes work, they can focus on things that are up close and far away at the same time. So you better be damn sure that your camo is just as visually disruptive at 100 yards, as it is at 20 yards, as those birds are doing their thing overhead. So it was a long process to get the color palette dialed in, but now that it's launched, feel super stoked about it. We even made it on a couple of the meme pages this morning. They were hating on it, but honestly, in my opinion, I was laying in bed this morning just cracking up, laughing at some of the meme pages that were making fun of it, because what they were making fun of was actually kind of exactly what we were going for. And so I feel super confident that we know it works exceedingly well, so much better than anything else in the market, because we didn't just go at this in one go, like, hey, what do you like? I mean, we took a full scale evaluation of every camo, not just in the market today, but going back to OG Frogman camo from the Marines. Like what was good about this, because Frogman camo turned into OG duck camo, and you look at that, and there was actually a lot of the philosophies of the breakup philosophies that you see executed in Taifa. You can see in some early camo patterns very early on that have been deemed effective. And even, I would go as far on a limb to say that Taifa is much more effective than old school duck camo. But I would tell you that, duck camo still has such a place in the market, not only just because it looks cool casually, but because there are some real breakup elements to it that make a lot of sense. So when we started the design process, we honestly looked at old school duck camo. Here are the things that it does really well, actually, and has been doing well since the 40s. And how can we bring that into the 21st century, and how can we improve upon that with some of the things that we know about how ducks see. So we really just went from there, and it was just a ton of development. I think we obsessed more over the camo pattern than anything else, to be completely honest with you. But it is most important. It goes on every single one of our products, and camo just has to work. I mean, we talk about the evolution of solids in hunting, and especially in Western big game, you can get away. I mean, I killed an elk with a bow at 12 yards, and I didn't have on camo pants, but guess what? He had no idea. You're not going to get away with that, with a duck standing out in the middle of the open, right? Like they're going to pick you apart immediately. So it was really important, and honestly, one of the highest priorities on our list to nail right out of the gate. So, we've got this tight collection of super technical duck dedicated and duck designed outerwear. But then to go with it, we're putting our pattern on everything, and that's going to tell you that it's made for duck hunting. Anytime you see that type of pattern, you're going to know that, this piece is meant to be in the field and it's meant to kill ducks in.
And it was, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, frankly, people can talk about what camo looks like in a picture or, on the internet all they want. But once you see Taifa in a cattail slough or a cornfield or a wheat field, you're like, oh, it's exactly what you need. Like, it just freaking looks right. It doesn't blob from a distance, which is my biggest pet peeve in camos.
And Logan will tell you, like, honestly, when I first saw the Taifa and when we were at the hotel room, Logan's like, oh, what do you think? And I'm like, it's not going to replace my Cypher. And I don't know why you didn't just put Spectre on it too. Like it didn't, like the Spectre's just kind of got the green in it. Like what? And then we went out and hunted for 2 days straight. And in those 2 days, we had rain, we had freezing rain, we had clouds, we had fog, we had overcast, we had sunny. It was like a huge mixed bag. And throughout that whole time, like we had guys standing over by the bush, and we had guys standing kind of in the mud pit, and we had guys standing like near the blinds. And then it kind of like at one point, I think Brian and I, or maybe Phil and I, looked at each other and we're like, holy shit, that stuff works. Like,
well, Dave, you and I were laying on the ground actually,
yeah,
outside of the blind, and someone took a picture of us, and it was really, I think that was your selling point. That was your turning point, because you saw, I mean, we weren't in a blind, we were just laying in the middle of a pick bean field, or I think it might have been a wheat field, but still, like we were just laying out there. And I think that's a test of a true waterfowl camo. And Sean has said forever how, and he's right, how important it is that you use natural cover, in your blinds, just because, some of the things, natural elements we can't recreate just with the UV spectrum that ducks see. And it's very important for you to have natural cover around you, but still laying out in the middle of a cut wheat field, we could have disappeared. Like we would have had birds landing on top of us. And so I think that was your selling point. But initially you weren't sold.
No. And
so that was cool for me to see you come full circle on it.
Yeah. Like I just wanted to point that out, because I'm not with, you're with First Lite, you're with Meat Eater. I'm not with those two. I'm just a dude talking. And when I saw it, when we're laying there, I think I even made the comment, like after I woke up and saw the picture, I think I said to Logan, I'm like, fuck man, we should just get rid of the blind and just lay in the geese, like just lay in the decoys. Like I could have my nap and no one would know. Like we only had one goose come in anyway. So it was great. So listen, I told Sean and Logan that I'd only keep him for an hour. I'd like to have him here for like 3, but it's been an hour. But I didn't get to know, like, other than the base layers, what are you looking forward to most in this launch, boys?
Sean, why don't you go ahead? Because I'm excited for all of it.
Yeah, really the piece that I was most skeptical about going into season, and then ended up being most excited about, is the Refuge Bib. Because granted, it's a very specific use case, right? You're not going to wear them in September hunting early season honkers. You don't need the Refuge Bib on.
There it is, Mark.
Unless you hunt. Yeah, man, I love those stinking things. You don't need them unless you hunt late season or even mid season to late season field hunting, right? If you're completely a water hunter, they're probably not for you. But if you are ever in the need of bibs and it's cold, like, they're the best. I told Logan this before. I was an uninsulated bib guy for a long time because I could layer under them and I could use them for everything. But you still get cold. You just do. And then all of a sudden, hunting in Wyoming when it was negative, whatever it was, negative 18, negative, wind chill, dude, warm, like actually warm, not just I can survive, but actually enjoying the hunt being warm. And it's nice to have a good bib, and not to have, there's other, I'll leave it at that.
Well, also for not that your entire audience is based around Ontario where you're from, but the hunting style of hunting we were doing, you guys do a ton of field hunting, and that's really what the Refuge Bib was designed to do. And there is an uninsulated pant that we have as well. The Omen Storm Shelter pant will be available in Taifa coming up, which again, it's our most hardcore mountain hunting alpine waterproof pant. But at the same time, it has a huge application in early season duck and goose. If you're doing stuff in a field, it's 100% waterproof, incredibly durable. I mean, it was built to withstand, the shale rock and sliding down shale. So it's definitely built tough enough for the field. So we do have an uninsulated and an insulated option there, but the Refuge Bib, as Sean said, it's meant to be the the pinnacle of like, this weather
Dude, it's
is
the Cadillac,
terrible.
man.
It is,
Yeah.
this weather is terrible and I have to stay warm. And, First Lite, we're go farther, stay longer. And in the case of, Waterfowl, it's generally the stay longer. You're not going to stay long if you're cold. It's the same thing with whitetail. You're just not going to do it. So it was really important for us to really cap that end of the market first and really prove ourselves as being, hey, we're going to keep you dry. We're going to keep you warm. Like, we guarantee it. And so coming out with that, it was really awesome to see that evolution. And it's actually, Sean and I haven't talked about this before. It's like very awesome to hear that he came around on the Refuge Bib. That's one of his favorite pieces.
The other one is, if you run a boat all the time, the Grizzly trigger mitt.
Yep.
Because that thing for keeping your hands warm when you're running a boat is like cheating. It's wonderful, especially with just a merino.
It's gonna be a trigger mitt like that.
Yeah, it's the lobster claw.
Yep. And it's got the clip around your wrist, so that when you take the glove off, it'll dangle. I use it a lot.
Idiot strings.
Yeah, is that the one, or is that the Tundras?
No, you're right. Yeah, it's.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, sometimes you develop product in a ski town and you pick up some things on the hill. And if you look at ski gloves, that's a resounding common feature that you find.
Those work until you do what I did, which is be cranking a airboat up on a winch and cut those clean off in the gear of the winch.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that pack. That's going to be a game changer for the kayak hunters.
Too. Like Philly's really looking forward to that.
So photographers are going to love it because it's perfectly designed it's waterproof. Like, for if you put it upside down, like it's designed, it's waterproof for like, what is it, 6 inches and 3 inches?
Yeah. So basically, we call it a bathtub design.
Bathtub,
and so, and it floats. So it's, I think, Sean and I were actually in Arkansas hunting some timber after Missouri. And we just had our blind bags, it's in the timber, in flooded timber. There's nowhere to set your shit down. And so, it was really awesome just to have, our bags, and honestly, water is moving a little bit, so we had to secure them, but just to have them floating next to you. And, as long as that zipper doesn't get submerged, and I mean, you have 6 inches of carry there, you'd literally have to have weightlifting weights in there to push it down below that. But it'll float next to you, and you can leave it in up to 6 inches of water laying face down for 100 years, and it's not going to leak.
Which is huge.
And then, yeah, it is. Huge. And we don't have a submersible zipper on it, only because for people who've worked with submersible zippers before, not only do they cost a lot and add a bunch of product costs, but they're just a pain in the ass to get in and out of. They're not easily workable. I mean, the tape that's required to make something completely watertight in a zipper requires a lot of effort to get in and out of. And, we wanted to make sure this blind bag was definitely easy to get in and out of, because there isn't, given that bathtub design, that RF welded bathtub design, there's no exterior pocketing on it. And we do have exterior MOLLE platforms, which will have different FHF, our sister company, makes awesome MOLLE based accessories, and we'll have pouches and bottle holders and shot shell holders and all the stuff coming from them that are kit out your ground control pack 100%. But I'm really excited about the pack. It was honestly the coolest product I've ever had an opportunity to work with in my career. It really does everything. Dave, earlier you mentioned, thinking through, all the details, and in writing the copy for the bag, I quite confidently say that carefully considered features for every moment of the hunt, and from the time that you're packing stuff in, and you're hot, and you want to put your waterproof or your insulated outerwear on top of the bag. You've got your thermos, also outside the bag on this holder, but it's not necessarily a dedicated bottle holder. You could put shot shells there, or a pouch, or whatever else that you may need. The way that it hangs, the modular strap systems, the camera bag style design, and how you can go modular with the different compartments inside it honestly, it adapts to any style of hunting, and I mentioned earlier in the podcast, guys, they hunt it's a little bit different everywhere you go, and that's why it's so important that we go everywhere. And that's why it was so important that, we were just launching one pack. We weren't going to launch a pit pack. We weren't going to, launch a pack suite. We just wanted one bag that was going to do it all. And that's very tough to do, because oftentimes what happens when you do that in product development, you end up, making a product that is, not really good at doing any one thing good. It's okay at doing a bunch of different things. And in my career, I can wholeheartedly say that this pack does it all, and it is awesome. It does it all awesome. So that's probably the piece that I'm most excited for as well, Sean.
I think it was kind of neat that you were showing me the pack and Phil's cleaning his camera, and then you got to open, and I said, "What's this little bag thing for?" And you said, "Oh, that's for the shells. That's like a little shell pouch." And Phil's like, "Oh, my camera's going to fit perfectly in there. That's where my lens will go." And so it's kind of, I don't know, I can't wait to see what people end up doing with the pack and how they use it and utilize it. Myself, it's going to go between my legs, in between the rails on my kayak, and it'll flip open and I have all my snacks there, because I'm a big dude and I love my snacks. You know what I'm saying? So
we know. Remember, we don't need to shoot that extra bag.
Yeah, see, that's just it, right? I also probably don't need like the parka to stay warm. That's how big I am. So anyway, guys, we're over the hour. I apologize for that, but it's been a great time. Mark, any last words?
No, good meeting you guys.
Good meeting you as well, Mark, for sure.
I mean, I heard about you, Logan, from the trip. I never got to go, but I heard every detail about that trip.
Great.
And I did have a couple of criticisms about a couple of items that have been brought to me. I just never had you as a contact, so maybe after we start recording, I'll mention a couple of those things. You probably already addressed them, I bet.
We'll put you and Philly in the same group chat, and you guys can hit me up every night with what I could be doing better. I do appreciate it, though. Again, it's none of it's personal. Like it is, just to reiterate, it's so important that we get feedback from everyone and in every way that they hunt, because what one guy says in Maryland, this is the way, and this is the way it has to be, is totally different from the most hardcore, authentic guy that's doing it in Oregon and says, this is how it is, and this is how it needs to be, right? Like we have to hear it all, or we're not going to make the best waterfowl product in the market.
Yeah. So, Sean, good meeting you. It's nice to see you in person after watching you on the show. I watched the show as soon as it got released. I think we were telling each other when we get released on our group chat. It's like, oh, this episode's out now. Boom, then a week later, another episode was out. We were all watching them, and it was great to see it. And we really appreciated your realistic take on waterfowl hunting in that show. So
nice. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I had fun talking to you guys. Happy to meet you. We should do another one of these sometime where we just talk, I don't know, decoy strategy, or something super fun like that, where everyone bounces ideas out.
You mean where we're not just shamelessly promoting our own product and shows?
I think, you know what, Sean, I think coming on right before duck season, we can get a list of stuff together. You should definitely come on. And you know what? You should come up to Ontario for a hunt with us, buddy. I think that'd be a bit of a trip.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah,
you ever had ketchup chips, Sean?
I have, because guess what? I have been to Ontario.
Yeah. Did you drink milk out of a bag? Because Logan didn't believe
Dave, don't. Let's not even listen. This has been a great podcast. Let's wrap it up on a positive note. I don't want to start talking about bag milk right now.
I just wanted to mention that I thought it would have been great. I looked through the ad for the new bag, and I was trying to convince Logan to you can put 5 bags of milks in there, like
that. See, that would milks. That'd be good, fun social media content.
Yeah. So I'll have to make that picture for myself, I guess. But, Anyway, guys, appreciate you both coming on.
Hey, appreciate you guys, thanks. As always. This was awesome. And it feels so much less like a podcast and just catching up with buddies, talking about our favorite stuff,
Yeah. So anyway, thanks a lot. Damien, our thoughts are with you, and look forward to having you back and talking to you, buddy. So anyway, surround yourselves with good people, and we'll catch you next week.